and that's why you couldn't connect today, but that's okay, don't worry. Today is our last class, so this is going to be the last video for module 3. I will be uploading the TKT sample test for module 3 as well as the answers so that you can practice at home. Later on, I'm going to give you some information about the course, about the kind of diploma we're going to give you, or the document that you will receive after you finish the course. Okay, after you watch all the videos, we're going to try to have like a reunion one day so that you can apply for the another sample test and see if you're able to do the real test, which will make us very very happy, right? Because that's the point of this course. Remember, the point is to get the certification. Okay, in all the modules that will be perfect. I just want to remind you that there are 3 modules. Those are the basic ones: module 1, module 2, and module number 3. Okay, you already know, you have already practiced what you are expecting in each module. So in this case, we're going to continue with module number 3, which is called managing the teaching and learning process. Okay, so first of all, I like to tell you, I want to tell you about our first topic, that is correcting learners. Okay, what is this? Well, basically, what we need to know about correcting learners is that there are many, many ways in which we can do so. Okay, so here we have an example. We correct learners sometimes when they have made a mistake and we want to show them that something is wrong. There is a range of correction strategies and techniques we can use to indicate or show that there is a mistake, and the ones we choose depend on a number of different factors. For example, the aim of the activity, the age of the learner, and their language level. Okay, so basically what it says here is that we are able and we need, it's compulsory for us like teachers to correct the students. Okay, we have already checked about making mistakes. We know now the difference between errors, the difference between sleeps, the difference between fossilization, and so on. So in this case, our job, let's say, command is to correct the students, but we need to know how correct them, right? Because, for example, you are teachers for children, most of you. So if you are teachers for children, you know that you cannot, like raise your volume that much, because maybe it's going to be shocking for them. Maybe they will be scared if you tell them off very very hard. So in this case, what I recommend you is like, like to speak softly sometimes. Like you can, I don't know, like model your language, your vocabulary, but it's not the same in high school, right? Maybe in high school you can raise your voice without any problem because they are almost adults and they can easily understand that they are doing something wrong. Okay, so the activity also, maybe the activity is not that difficult. Maybe it's just like answering some questions, and maybe you are looking that your students are making a mistake. You can help them. But for example, if you are having like maybe a project in which is a role play, maybe you will ask them, you will warn them not to speak that much, or not to make those mistakes, because obviously it's a project. It has more value than just a simple activity. All right, so we're going to continue. I'm going to explain you about correction strategies and techniques. Okay, there are, as I was telling you, there are many many strategies to correct your students. Okay, the first one is oral correction. Okay, what is this? Well, remember, we can correct in 2 ways: oral way and written way. In this case, we're going to talk about the oral way. The best way to correct our students is by timelines. Okay, so for example, here, as you can see in the draw, there is an example of a timeline. So we can draw a timeline on the board to show learners the relationship between the use of a verb tense and the time or aspect. This technique is particularly useful for mistakes such as, here we have an example: I have seen the movie 2 weeks ago. Okay, So what you can teach your learners is about finding first of all keywords. In this case, the keyword is 2 weeks ago. That means that it's in the past. So you can start making this line. You can explain it. This is the past. This is the moment, and this is the future. So if you say I have seen the movie, you started here and you continue watching it, or you can watch it in the future, in the present, and in the future. But you're telling me 2 weeks ago, and ago means that it has already passed. So obviously it needs to be in the past. So you saw the movie at this point in the cross. Okay, so that's a good way for them to realize about time tenses by just drawing this timeline. Okay, so this is the first oral correction, let's say. Now let's go with the second one, finger correction. What is this? Okay, this is very common, especially for us like teachers, but also the students sometimes use it. Okay, this shows where in an utterance they have made a mistake. We can indicate where the mistake is without the speaking and prompt learners to self-correct. We show one hand on the class and point to each finger in turns as we say each word in the utterance. Okay, so a good way is like, moving your finger, like telling them, this is my subject, my verb, and then my object, or something like that, so that you can explain the parts of the utterance. Okay. It is also helpful when we want them to use contractions. We bring two fingers together, right? We normally use I am, I'm. Okay, so we use the contraction. I am, I'm. And that's a good way to correct the students and use, obviously, the contractions and so on. So as you can say, there are many ways in which we can use the fingers to correct. Okay, just by indicate like yes, you're having right, or no, or maybe just like giving them the pause, subject, and then verb, object. You see, and that's how you can point with your fingers, and it's a good technique. The next technique is very useful, especially for us like teachers, are gestures and facial expressions. Okay, so gestures and final and facial expressions are useful when we do not want to distract or interrupt the learners, but still want to show them they have made a slip. Remember that a slip is most of the times when they are distracted, not because they don't really know the language, but maybe because they are distracted. Okay, they are also useful to indicate different kinds of mistake. Okay, so I'm going to explain you that. One gesture that teachers often use to remind learners what a pass is needed is to point back over their shoulder, like like in the past, like that. Okay, so we are our face and we go like in the shoulder so that we are indicating the past. Here it says something that is very curious. They also use it to indicate different kinds of mistakes. What is this? Okay, so maybe if they are using a pronunciation mistake, or if they are having a pronunciation mistake, you can move your mouth, right? You see, and that's a facial expression, and they can realize I'm saying something wrong. Or maybe if you are getting used to with your students, a surprise, for example, if you think that they made a wrong sentence, for example, she live in Mexico. She live, like, just with your eyebrows, like you are showing seriously, and they say, oh, no, she lives with an S. Okay. Or maybe you ask them to think. Now it's your moment, think. And then you may like the face like, okay, think about it, and so on. So there are many facial expressions, many gestures that you can use. Obviously that will depend on the class, right, and the students too. Okay, so you can have many types of correction just by using your gestures. Okay, I will continue with the next one. I continue with oral corrections. Um Sorry, I think it's the same. Yeah, it's the same this one, but it's basically the same. Use gestures and so on. Okay, phonemic symbols. This is very important. When learners are familiarized with them, they can be used to focus on mispronouns sounds by pointing at the relevant symbol. Okay, so this is very, very useful, especially if we have like this phonemic chart and our students are used to seeing it so that you can point, okay, repeat after me. No, that's not the sound. We don't say hose. I say house. I have like the ah sound. Or for example, the difference between cut, for example, cut or cup and cup, right? Like maybe this is with coop like Cooper, and this is cup with you, but the pronunciation is different. Okay, or the different, for example, meat met, right? Meat met, and so on. So, but only with the symbols you can show them, and then they can realize their mistake. Okay. Um. Sorry, it just moved. It's echo correcting, means repeating what a learner says with raising intonation. Okay, so imagine that your student says, all right, I works in Mexico. You say, I works. You see, I works, and they say, oh no, 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 I work, because works is with third person. Ah, that's correct. So just by raising the intonation, like having kind of a question, like doing, like raising up, maybe they can realize that they are making a mistake. Okay, you can also ask them to identify their mistakes, but you are not telling them. You're not given even clues. For example, by focusing learners' attentions on it and telling the student that there is a mistake. Okay. For example, we as teachers we can say, "Are you sure?" Okay, so that we want them to realize, to know, to identify their own mistake. For example, I works in Tasco. I works in Tasco. Are you sure? Is that right? And so on, so that they can realize there is a mistake. Okay. Another point of this is delayed correction. Okay, sometimes it is best not. It has been known, sorry, to indicate or correct mistakes at the time they are made. For example, in a role play, we can say or show the students' mistakes without interrupting their fluency. Okay, so delayed correction means like to wait a little bit. I know that sometimes it's very difficult for us, and whenever they are speaking and we want to correct them, but we need to wait because they are doing maybe a role play or something that you require their fluency. Maybe you require that they are giving an opinion, and if you interrupt them, maybe they will lose the idea. Okay, so no, just let them be, let them continue. Obviously, if you are like you forget easily, you can, like write the mistakes on the notebook, and at the end the person is talking, you can start saying, hey, you made this mistake, this sentence was wrong, be careful with the verbs, be careful with the adverbs, and so on. Okay, so that's basically the like corrections, like to wait a little bit for their for giving them feedback somehow. Mhm. Okay, so we're almost done. We're missing like four more. Okay, remember so far we have looked at these ones. We have looked at the first one, which is timelines, especially for sentences utterance. We have already checked the finger correction. Remember, it's very common to use the fingers, to use the hands to explain, to correct. We have already checked gestures and facial expressions. This is number three. Like like use your face, your mouth, your nose, your eyes to indicate they are making a mistake. Phonetic symbols, especially when talking, right? Especially when they are saying something in the wrong pronunciation. So you can show them the phonemic and so on. Okay, echo correcting, like raising a little bit so that the student can realize the mistake, identifying the mistake, maybe just with tag questions like, are you sure? Like, really? Something like that. Okay, and the like correction, like to wait a little bit for their answers. Okay, or for sorry for giving them feedback at the end. Okay, now let's go with peer and self correction. What is this? Okay, the first one involves learners correcting each other's mistakes. This is peer. The second one is when learners correct their own mistake. Okay, so peer correction is when you one day as a group they correct themselves. Okay, you can ask them. You can say, okay, give me some sentences in present perfect, and they are telling you, and you just write them. Okay, two of these sentences have a mistake. Please tell me in a group. All of you tell me what the mistake is and how we can correct it. And then you make them to correct it themselves because you were just writing, but they created all the sentences. Okay. And the second one is by themselves. Like, okay, like maybe you are telling them write three sentences in present perfect. They write them all, and then whenever they come to you, you say there is a mistake, check it out, and then you want them to realize their mistake. Okay, we can use prompts to do so. For example, repeating part of the utterance and stop just before the part we want them to correct. So let's imagine in the same sentence of present perfect, I have studied since 5 years. One more time, I have studied since 5 years. So you start, I have studied. You are indicating that since is not the word. So they can realize and say, oh no, it's for. I have studied for 5 years. And then you say, yes, that's correct. Mhm. Okay, so that's very, very basically peer and self-correction. Okay. But sometimes teachers there are occasions situations in which we can ignore errors. How can we do so? Well, we usually do so when the mistake is above the learner's language level, especially with elementary students. Also when the student is weak or shy. Okay, so what is this? Ignoring errors. For example, you that you teach to children, you know that they don't have lots of grammar rules, that they don't even know present perfect is, vocabulary. So maybe they say, the very small ones, maybe they say, I like my perro. Something like that. I like my perro. Maybe you would say, no, it's not perro. It says dog. I like my dog. I love my dog. That's okay, right? You need to correct it. But imagine that the students say in elementary school, for example, I like the flower, but you see in the picture many flowers. Okay, maybe you will start saying, okay, I will pass it because she doesn't understand the difference between singular and plural because she's in first grade of kindergarten. It's her first class, maybe. So you will say, okay, I like flower, it's okay. But then maybe with the process, with the time, you will say, no, it's not flower, it's flowers because you see many flowers. Okay, so but sometimes you can ignore that, or maybe in specific situations when the student is very shy and this is the first time he participates, you are surprised and you say, I will skip that error. I don't care. The good point is that he participated. The good point is that he's paying attention for the very first time. So in that moment, you are obviously you are able to ignore those errors because maybe you just wanted for him to participate. Later on, obviously, if he continues making errors, obviously it's a good idea to correct them. But at the beginning or in a specific moments, you can ignore them. Okay? Reformulating. This is another good technique. This is a technique which parents use when their young children make language mistakes. They correct the mistakes by repeating the utterance correctly without drawing the child's attention to the mistake. For example, the child says, we go to the zoo yesterday. And the parent responds, yes, that's right. We went to the zoo yesterday. Okay? And so on. All right. So this is a good technique because you don't say, obviously, you make the children or your students to think, right? He said went and I said goat. So I am wrong. It's not goat, it's went. So as you can see, in this case, it's like a good way because you are not they don't feel that you are attacking them. They feel that you are correcting, but in a good way. Mhm. And many parents do so with their children. Very good. Now, uh, this is the last one. No, we're only two more. Recasting. By rewarding it and saying it back to the learner in its improved form. For example, the student says, I'm not of the same opinion as my friend. And the teacher says, oh, you mean you don't agree with him? Okay. So in this case, whenever they make an a sentence, it's not the same. Like, this is more for high school students, right? Like maybe yes, you correct them, but in a harder way. Like, you mean this, right? Or you want them to realize their mistake, and obviously using the new sentence, you correct them, but it's not. It is not, how can I say, that cruel. Is it is not that cruel, but it's not that soft in the other hand. Okay. And finally, giving the rule and an example or definition. Okay, so explaining the rule and give a clearer example, sometimes by eliciting. Okay, so in this case, you realize that they made a mistake. I have studied 2 years ago. I have studied 2 years ago. That's the sentence. And you say, okay, let me explain you. What is the use of present participle when listening? And they say, I remember this action started in the past and continue in my present. Okay, so let's analyze your sentence. Remember, in present perfect, you use a subject, you use auxiliary, you use a verb in past participle, a complement, and so on. And time expression. But this time expression says 2 years ago. Ago is a keyword for what? And they say, for simple past. Yes, that's right. So now you don't need a present perfect tense. You need a simple past tense. And so on. Okay. So those are basically the techniques and strategies to correct mistakes in oral way. I just want you to remind them very quickly. Those are timelines for sentences, time sentences. Those are finger correction, like using your fingers, your hands. Gestures and facial expression with your face, doing such things. Phonemic symbol, mhm, especially for pronunciation. Eco correcting when you repeat the same word but with more intonation. Identifying the mistake, asking like, "Are you sure? Is that okay?" So that you can get his or her answer. Delay correction, okay, correct but wait a little bit. Uh-huh. Peer and self-correction. Remember, peer is correct themselves, but the whole class, and self-correction just themselves. Ignoring errors, remember, bypassing some errors just because it's not necessary or it's not that hard. Reformulating, like it's like correcting them, but in a good way, so that the student realize you are correcting him, but not you are not that hard with that mistake. The next one is rephrasing, which is very similar to the previous one, but in this case you correct in a tougher way. Mhm. And finally, giving rule an example or definition, like re-explain basically. If you have already explained it, you need to re-explain the mistake, you need to give information, you need to give examples, and so on. Okay, so those are the most important for oral correction. Remember, if you have a doubt or a question, please type on me on Edmodo so that I can look at you and I can see what you're doing and so on. And if I can help you, I will for sure. Symbol. Okay, now let's go with written correction. You know that it's different from the speaking correction. We normally, or what I normally do is symbols. Okay, I use symbols. The best way to correct students is by using codes mistake that the learners have made. Okay, so here we have an example of such symbols. Okay, so There is like a kind of a B, kind of a Y inverted. Okay, I use it, or many teachers use it when there is a word missing or an auxiliary in the first line. Okay, like for example, I going when it's going. Okay, so you are missing the am. So a missing word or a missing auxiliary. WO, okay, when it's in word order. Okay, there is a word order make in line 2. The sentence, she's tall and has got long hair dark. So she should be, she's tall and has got long dark hair. Okay, so remember that in English, first we write the adjective and then the noun. Okay, so in this case, this is a word order. SP for spelling. There is a spelling mistake in line 3. Uh-huh. Okay, so in this case, the word writing should be writing. Instead of having double T, it's just one T. Okay. V for vocabulary. There is a vocabulary mistake in line number 4. That when the correct word is watching. Okay, so yes, maybe it's a word, but not the one that is required. Or they got the idea, or you got the idea, but it's not the word. P for punctuation. That means, like comma, full stop, etc. Okay, so the learner has used the wrong punctuation in line number 5. The learner has written it's without the apostrophe. The correct version is it's other sorry, it's without the apostrophe. All right, so I got it. Like you need a comma with that. It's comma without the apostrophe. Okay. Other examples of symbols in a correction code are like a tick for good sentence or expression, question mark, ask me, I don't understand. So I got more or less the idea, but it's very difficult to understand, or I definitely don't understand it. Prep, which is a preposition mistake. You are missing a preposition, or you are including an extra preposition which is not needed, and so on. T as a verb tense. Okay, maybe they said I have studied English 2 years ago. Okay, so no, not at all. Okay, and agreement. AG, like maybe they are not doing the correct thing, that maybe they need to change, or they need to write something extra so that you can agree with it. Mhm. So I know that many of you teachers use these symbols, not exactly to correct your students because it's very difficult, especially for children, but I'm sure you have used them or you have seen them like for a while, right? There are other kind of strategies. This is number one. I'll use the symbols, but there are other strategies such as teacher correction. So the teacher corrects all their work. Okay, so that they give you a piece of writing, you correct it, and you give it back. Okay. I don't really recommend this one, teachers, because you are not helping your student. He will make the same mistakes once and once again because they don't realize about it. But sometimes, where you are in a hurry and it's an important project, that can help, but only in time situations. If you think that you have enough time to correct them, use correct them, please. That's my suggestion. Peer correction, the same as oral, right? They correct themselves. Uh-huh. They correct each other or discuss possible corrections. Okay, so maybe you show up one of the students writing and you ask them to correct. Okay, together or oneself. No, in this case, sorry, that's the self correction. They correct themselves. This helps to develop the ability to edit and redraft. Okay, remember, we need to teach them to edit their work and draft it, right? So that they can get this more than ability, this attitude. Uh-huh. And finally, the same as speaking, ignoring the mistake. This depends on the situation and the learner's level, as we have seen, right? So maybe you are asking your students to write a sentence, but obviously your student is from primary and he commits like a very, very big mistake, which you will spend the whole day explaining. So you just ignore the mistake, and later on, as the years come over, you you recover the situation, right? Okay, teachers, very good. So I hope this is clear. This is how to correct students. We have already seen many, many techniques. We have already identified the most common ones, and I'm sure that you feel identified with the majority of them. I am so sure about it. Okay, so now remember that the course is for preparing you for the TKT. So we're going to have a sample test. Okay, so in this sample test, for questions from 1 to 6, match the correction techniques with the teacher's aim listed A from A to G. There is one extra option which you don't need to use. Okay, so here we have the correction technique and we have the objectives of the teachers of the activities. For example, A, to expose students to correction without them being conscious of it. Okay, so what is this technique? Remember to look for your keywords. In this case is conscious without being conscious, which means that they don't realize that they are making a mistake. Okay, so you can see you have seven teacher aims, and but you only have 6 sentences. Okay, so you need to be aware on that. There is one extra you don't need to use. So I'm gonna do it, teachers. Remember, if you finish earlier, my recommendation for you is to advance the video so that you don't waste that much time. Okay, so 10 minutes from now, start now. Okay, teachers, thumbs up. So we're gonna check the answers. Obviously, I cannot reflect on them because I don't have yours, but let's look at them. So here we have the teacher's aims and we have the answers. The teacher decided to ignore the mistake which she heard students making their role plays. So the technique obviously is to focus on fluency and give students encouragement. Okay, so in this case, you don't care because you want them only to speak and you wanted to have a self-confidence. That's why you ignore this mistake. The teacher used finger correction, highlighting what the missing word in the question was. So in this case, is to encourage self-correction, right? So you just point, you just give them, and then you want them to do it by themselves. The teacher reformulate and young learners' utterance. So in this case, Mace, the technique, the aim, sorry, to expose students to correct being conscious of it. Okay, you ask them to reformulate, to continue with doing so, but without checking or without being that tough with them when they make that mistake. The teacher put the students into groups and decide and asked them to rate and comment and each other's written summaries. So to encourage peer correction, remember peer correction has to do with correcting with all together. The teacher pointed at a symbol on the phonemic chart. So in this case, it's to focus on primary phonemic chart helps to do so. And finally, the teacher drew a timeline on the board showing the difference between the present simple and present continuous after several students had used the wrong tense. So in this case, is to develop understanding of language used by expressing a visual representation. So the visual representation obviously is a timeline. Okay. So the letter that you didn't use was the T. The focus students on features and connect. We never talked about idioms. We never talk about slang or things like that, or different accents when talking. Nothing to do with cultural. So that's why this is not used. Okay, teacher. So I hope this is clear. Remember, we have now different ways to correct our students. I hope you use them, the majority in them, in each specific situation, of course. And well, that's all for this topic. And now let's go for the very last topic. The very last part of Module 3. And then you will be ready to do your TKT test, Module number 3. All right. So, uh, one more time, managing the teaching and learning process. That's the name of this module. Now, let's go with giving feedback. First of all, we need to know what feedback is. Feedback is giving information to someone about their learning and or showing them that you have understood or not what they have said. Teachers can give feedback to the learners and the other way around. So basically, feedback is giving extra information. You have worked with the situation, you have worked with the activities, but it's a good way to conclude that a lesson, right? So that you can, I don't know, correct mistakes if necessary. You can give them extra exercises but not do it there, like maybe for homework or whatever. You can recheck some exercises, rewrite some sentences, etc. Okay, so it's a good way to finish a session. Okay. When teachers give feedback, they give them information about their learning. This feedback can be to the whole class as well as individual. Okay, so if the teacher gives feedback, we have three ways, which we're going to be talking later on. We can do it individually, part of the group, or the whole class. Remember, the purpose of giving feedback is to motivate, encourage the learner autonomy. That's basically the main point of giving feedback. Okay, and obviously it's for learners to help them. Okay, when feedback to each other is called peer feedback. I'm just going to write that. We're going to talk about peer feedback between students later on. Right now we're going to focus only in teachers feedback. Okay, so examples of teacher feedback to learners. Another example could be, well done, that was very good. It was much better than last time you really thought about the presentation. The focus obviously is to progress, effort, and achievement. Okay, so you want to remark that. You want to remark that he did better. Maybe he's not that good at the language, but he's trying to improve. Okay, obviously, one of the proposals is encouraging the learner, and telling her she did well, which means praising. Okay. Another example of an oral feedback from one teacher. Have another look at there is a problem with the spelling, and I think there are more than two people. The focus obviously is the language because you are correcting some problems with the sentence and the content. As you can see, he says there are more than two people, so something on its content is not very good. The purpose, identifying where there was a problem and prompting what the learner needs to do to correct her own answers. So in this case, you are telling them, are you sure that it's only one, two people? Maybe there are, and then they continue and they correct themselves. Mhm. Another way it's, let's look at the new structure on the board again. I think some of you have misunderstood how it has to do with language because, as you can see, they are talking about a structure. The purpose obviously is reviewing a problematic language area with the whole class in an encouraging way. Okay, so it's just like you are not like a tough teacher by doing so. You are just remarking that they are making a mistake and you want to give feedback because you want that this is clear. Okay, we have also examples of written example. You can write in a piece of work, what an amazing story. You've used adjective very well this time, but there were a few problems with the past tenses. Have a look at the regular verb list and the back of the textbook. Okay, obviously the focus in written are more than in the oral ones, because in this case you are grading many more aspects like content, ideas, language, strengths and weaknesses. For example, you are telling them that one of his strengths was that he used lots of adjectives, but one of his weaknesses is that he has or she has problems with the irregular verbs. Mhm. The purpose of this kind of feedback is giving a personal response to the piece of work in order to encourage the learner identifying a positive aspect of the word, which is the adjectives, and also giving exact information about one problem area and about where the learner could find useful reference material. So as you can see, it has like three things. Basically, encourage something positive, but at the same time say something that he needs to be working on, and you give a reference material, some extra material in which the student can look at. Okay, another oral kind of feedback is this one. You've made good progress in all your work this month. Your written work is much more accurate. Okay, so in this case, you're talking about language and progress. What is the purpose? Basically, informing the learner of her process and identifying an area where particular progress has been made, which means encouraging. Okay, so as you can see, you are giving them like the chance, you are telling them like what they are doing wrong, what they think they need to focus more, like to be more accurate, and so on. And finally, written. Okay, we have uh another way or another example of giving feedback. You have B slash 70%. Have a look at grammar section 5 at the back of the course book and check again the difference in mean between the past simple and the past perfect. Has to do with language because we're talking about the time tenses. What is the purpose? Giving a grade. In this case, you are giving a B, which means the 70%, and informing the learner of and what problem was with their work and telling them exactly when they need to review and how. So you're telling him or her that they are having problems and they can look at the book. Nothing happens. We all make mistakes, but they can improve that. Mhm. And another and final kind of feedback, remember these are just examples, okay? You've done the pair work activities quite well this week, but I heard too much Spanish and not enough English. So in this case, has to do with language, obviously, because he did good, but it is achievement and behavior. So maybe you say no, using Spanish in the classroom, and obviously he's misbehaving and he doesn't get achievements. Okay, so example of this is encouraging learners, but also informing them of inappropriate behavior. In this case, using Spanish, monitoring a student's behavior over several lessons to give feedback on changes. Example, improvements in behavior or worsening of behavior. So as you can see, what it tries to say is that we can monitor our students. Okay, we can check their behavior and so on. Okay. There are other kind of examples of feedback, not only those ones, not only those recommendations, especially if we as teachers, we want to improve our teaching. For example, we can have some illicit feedback. It can give information whether learners like what they are doing, interested in the material or activities, they are having problems with the language. Okay, so maybe you can say, you use, for what? Or what is the reason why we use past simple? And then they tell you. Or maybe you can talk about your class, right? Like what aspect in this class you liked better or you liked the most, and then you make them think and they say, oh, I like the most this and this and this. Okay, so just by just by eliciting some questions, so that's eliciting feedback. You can get information about what they know, what they could be, that what could have been better, and at the same time about your classes, right? Diaries. Teacher uses them to find out information from the learner because students write aspect on their learning process. The teacher reads it personally. Okay, so as you can see, you can ask them, okay, every single month you are going to give me your diary. You are going to be writing all the things that we see in the classes, what you learned, what you didn't learn, okay, what was easy, what was more difficult, what activities you liked, what activities you didn't like, and so on. So at the end of each month, I'm going to be recovering your diaries, and then you personally, obviously, if you have the time, you read each piece of work, and then you are having like kind of a feedback in their teaching learning, in their learning, sorry, process, in their learning process, and at the same time, according to your class. Okay, and individual tutorials. Okay, which means small meetings between the teacher and one student or few students to discuss their learning. Okay, so this is basically like to say, hey, come here, come to the office. We're going to discuss about these. I have seen that you have some difficulties here, so that's another kind of feedback. It's not very useful because obviously it takes a lot of time, and you are only giving good information to very few students. Okay, obviously you are according to your situation, according to your situation, according to your diagnosis, but obviously you are the tutor or something. Mhm. And the final one is form or comments, grade or marks on the learner's record sheet. Remember, most of the students or most of the times the students have like kind of a notebook, kind of a note stuff in which you can note if they are making mistakes, if they are misbehaving, or something like that, and you can make and obviously you tell them. Basically, you tell to the students. Maybe parents can read it, but the most important people to educate the students. So in this case, you can say like, "Hey, please, you need to work on this. I have already written in the record sheet. So please look at it and improve that part." Mm-hmm. Very good. So as I was telling you at the beginning, I decided to leave this until the end, which is called peer feedback. Okay, so Basically, learners give feedback to their class teacher. Students reflect on the work the class may have done in order to help each other to improve. This also helps to train learners in a skill they need to become autonomous. Okay, so at the end of a class, you will say, okay, now please, Fernanda, you're going to stand up and you're going to explain me what you understand about the topic, what, give me some examples, how you can conclude the topic with a very general sentence, with a very general idea. Then obviously she needs to stand up and explain, and obviously she's giving feedback to their classmates, but also they can also participate in such situation, right? They can say all their comments. You can even ask them to say them, right, to say their comments. If they have a question or a doubt, that is the moment. But you as a teacher, you are just a guider. You can interrupt, but just in case it is completely necessary. If not, you just say, hey, this is for this and this and this, and that's it. Okay. And finally, well, you can also have feedback from your student. Okay, so now this is the end of the class. We have seen the simple past, the uses, the sentences. Now tell me, what aspect of the class did you like most? Okay, and what could have been better? In this game, did you have fun? Did you didn't? In this activity, was it helpful? Wasn't it? And so on. Okay, so you can have also feedback. Sometimes it's good for teachers to see or to realize where we're doing good, but at the same time, what we can improve. Mhm, and so on. So basically, that's all about feedback, teachers. Remember, these are for concluding. We just want to realize if our students really learn something. We have different examples according to different purposes, which is encouraging, giving extra work, etc. Or just to correct and so on. We have also other kind of feedback such as illicit diaries, individual meetings, and writing some stuff in some behavior sheets and so on. And also we can also see that there are feedback, although it is not very common, but teachers, sorry, students can give feedback and so on. Okay, so now let's go with a real activity for the TKT. Well, it's just a sample test. Okay, I hope this is clear. If not, please let me know. Okay, so I'm gonna read the instructions and I want you to tell me if you understand. Well, not in this case, obviously, but in Edmodo, you can write me if you have some problems or questions with the answers. Okay, for questions from 1 to 7, look at the classroom situations in which the teacher gives feedback and the three possible types of feedback listed A, B, and C. Okay, they are very similar to the previous ones. Remember, we can also have delayed feedback for attitude, etc. So the point here, we didn't look at the feedbacks as like that, but obviously because of context, you can infer their meanings. Okay, so for example, in number 1, the teacher noticed all the learners were having problems. Sorry, choose the type of feedback. Yes, I have already written that. Read that. The teacher noticed all the learners were having a problem or were having problems with some target vocabulary. She noted the problems down and did a revision exercise in the next day. So what you need to know that you or your keywords is target vocabulary. So we're talking about lexis. Okay, so and here it says a revision exercise the next day. So not at the moment. He realized and he decided to do it later. So those keywords are going to be helping you for knowing what the answer could be. Okay, so I'm gonna give you 10 minutes, teachers, to do it. If you remember, if you finish earlier, you cannot, waste much time. Okay, you can start now. 10 minutes. Okay, teachers, let me tell you that time's up. Okay, so we're gonna check the answers. Okay, so the first one, remember that I told you about target vocabulary and about the next day, obviously, is delayed feedback because you're doing the feedback later. After you see the problems, then you prepare something and you're giving them the feedback until the next day. For that day, you let them be, you wait, and then you continue it the next day. A young learner had just finished talking to the class about about his hobby. The teacher said, "Thanks, Juan. You're trying hard. Well done." So, feedback on language, feedback on effort, or feedback on ideas. In this case, it's a feedback on effort. Why? Because it says you try hard. So the verb try and hard, it's implying something that they made an effort, right? Mm-hmm. A teenage learner had written a story for homework. Worked and wrote the comment. This is much better than last week's homework. Well done. So feedback on progress because you are talking about than last week's homework. So you are comparing. You're not talking about the attitude. You're not talking about strength and weaknesses. You're not telling you did good this, but bad this. No, you are saying you did it better than last time. Okay. The next one, the teacher wrote on the first draft of a learner composition. Look at this website for more ideas. Help with finding reference sources. Okay, so you're giving them all the resources. You are a provider. Mhm. Number six, a teacher talking on a group of private group work activity said, "You talked a lot today and worked well together." Okay, so in this case, you are telling them like they did very well. They behaved as is properly in this class because they talked and they worked. It's feedback on behavior. Most of the times when we talk about children, we need to realize that many of the feedback has to be related to behavior. As they don't really care about language, we need to encourage them at least to do the activities and at least to try to understand and to obviously behave in the class. Okay, no pronunciation. He doesn't say anything about pronunciation. He said they spoke, but that's fluency. Learning style, no, because he never said you are visual and you do this very nice. No. A group of students gave oral presentation to the class. Afterwards, the teacher said, "You didn't mention your reason for choosing the topic. You need to include that next time." Okay, so feedback on organizing ideas, not because he's not saying like you this wrong this, you need to organize, you need to change the ideas. No, feedback on of range of language, no range of language because he didn't make grammar mistake or accuracy mistake. Feedback on content, you missed this part, so you need to do it. You need to include in the content next time. And finally, an student wrote his learner diary where you always ask the same students to answer. It takes me longer to think in English, so I never have a chance to answer. Okay, so in this case, it's feedback to the teacher on classroom procedure. Okay, so in this case, the teacher needs to say, uh-huh, uh like way like organized when he's going to be asking what activities they are going to do, so it's more related to organization. So not the material, not the activities, not the specific language. It's talking about the procedures, the stages. Okay, do this first but just for a few minutes, then ask them for a few minutes, and so on. Okay, so those are the answers, teachers. I know that you did very, very well. Even though you couldn't be here today, I know that you will do your best in order to get this test. Okay, so just to remind you, teachers, about this, remember giving feedback. It's to conclude that activity, conclude the things, check their and give the students a chance to recheck, to redraft, to redo it, to recheck in different sources, and so on. Okay, so with these teachers, basically, I am done. We have already checked all the modules. We have already found examples and so on about uh, about the learning process of the students, about language, how we have already talked about planning, about teacher management, students management, and so on. So basically, we have checked all these activities. I hope you have enjoyed this class with me. I really enjoy it. I really have fun. I really got some good ideas from you, and I hope you got the same in mind. Remember, let's try to be in touch so that you can be ready for your TKT test. Okay, let's try to be in touch. Let's try to do more practice. I hope and I really wait for you that this could be, not online this time, like, but personally, like we can have like we can get together, do the activities for the TKT, and obviously, if you need some help or if we can help you to do the exam, maybe in Cuernavaca, in International House, or maybe in Iguala. Why not? We can contact the people, the organizers, the ones that are applying the exam, so that you can do it there in Iguala. Obviously, I will be there helping you. And remember, we're going to be in touch. Since now this page is not available, it's going to be, like, because we need to pay some amounts to be here, not anymore. But we will be in touch in Edmodo and by WhatsApp. Okay, so don't worry, we still have communication. And well, thank you very much, teacher, for all your time. Thank you for all the activities, for the best idea, for your participation and everything. Okay, I'm really thankful for you doing many many things for me, and thanks for trusting in us. Thanks for trusting in Selex, and we're going to continue working on it because we never stop. Thank you, teachers. Have an excellent holiday, vacation, rest a lot, and see you very soon. Okay, goodbye. Thanks.